Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Today is the 23rd day of the month of Cheshvan, and it's the 16th day of the month of November.
Close. Oh, let's not rush it that much.
We're 2 months away from the 16th of February, and
what is that now?
we are welcoming everybody to the class in which we are studying the book, The Four Worlds, and last week we caught up so much that we didn't even get through one of these lines. So I am going to immediately get into the text within 2 minutes, so we should be able to get moving here. We are talking about the four worlds, and we've gone through over and over and over again the different levels. And the reason why I continue to repeat these things is because as much as you understand while it happens, it's more difficult to remember the details and the nuances. And so each time I focus on like some other details that we had discussed previously, so to give sort of a review. But last week we did a very comprehensive review. So the four worlds are the world of emanation, the one that's semi-godly. Because it's so godly, the godliness dominates within there, and it's hard to even see, and sometimes to even find the physicality or the non-godliness that's in there, the tangible versus the godly. The truth is, there's no tangible up there, it's all spiritual. Yet there is a form there. There are levels in that world. But the levels are sometimes unrecognizable because of the dominance of godliness, which is similar to a fleeting thought in a person's mind, which we make a mental note and it's not there anymore. But it's there. It's just not in front of you anymore. So it's not recognizable necessarily that it's there. That's the world of emanation, the world of Atzilus. The world of creation, the world of Beriah, is a world in which the tangible is beginning to be recognizable. So you now have the comparison is you have the tools, you have the wood in which to build. You haven't done anything with the wood yet, but you've got the ingredients in your hands. You're now there in you've gone to Home Depot and you have it in your workshop. So that the tools are there, the wood is there. You just haven't done anything.
Only thing missing is Mel.
There you go.
I'll be in that spiritual soon.
Not
We'll be
soon.
that spiritual.
Soon, not very soon, but
He doesn't mean to leave this world and go there.
No,
he means
no,
to bring it down to this world. That's what Mel
Yeah.
means.
We'll come over and do the woodwork.
I got that, but your wife is concerned about where you're heading, Mel. Anyway.
Gave up on him.
All right, number 3 is the world of Yetzirah, the world of formation. This is now where you've taken the tools and you've taken the material and you've turned it into shapes. You formed it, the world of formation. You formed it into something. And so now it's formed. Now the next stage of building is to assemble it, to screw it, to nail it, and to put it together. When you have the finished product is when you come down to this world, the world of action. So those are the four worlds, and they work very similar to the way this world works. Why would the spiritual worlds work according to the way we have our world? Is because ultimately the reason why this energy is coming through all these worlds is to arrive here, to create this world. So on the way there are a bunch of spiritual filters, but it's following the rules the way it is in this world, so that we should have some kind of perception of what's going on. Now that we have the perception, therefore the words of prayers are filled with what the angels do in the different worlds, and so we get an idea of how the traveling of this of this godly energy comes to this world and eventually comes down to us. And he's placed us down here. And he's not just placed us down here, he's also given us instructions of how to live our lives. He's given instructions to the Jewish people who were chosen among all the rest of humanity to do many, many more and to be constantly involved with godliness. He's also given instructions to the rest of the world, to the other nations of the world through the Torah. And those are basic moral civil laws that should govern every single place, every single country. And it's our mission to spread that. So that's basically where we're holding. We have a lot more details that I didn't share right now, but over the time, this is where we are, generally speaking. We are now on page 44. Definitions, towards the end of the page. The realm of the spirit, and here he's going back now to something that he began at the beginning of this essay. And what he began at the beginning of this essay was, is there time and space in the spirit where time and space doesn't really exist? Spiritual worlds don't have time and space. Space was created for this world. The spiritual worlds don't occupy any space. Time comes with space. You can't have space if you don't have time, and you can't have time if you don't have space, because space means you go from here to here. That means there is a time where you can come from here to there. Time is measured by space. So how long it takes you to get from here to there, or how long it takes you to move this to here, or how long it takes you to go around the world. The sun going around the world takes 24 hours, but it's 24 hours in different places around the world. That's how it is. And the whole world isn't covered automatically as one with time, with the sun. It has different time. If you're in a sphere, then it's a 360 degree, so you have to have the 18 degrees per, and that's how it goes per hour, and so on and so forth. So time is related to space. Time and space are both created instantly. When you created space, you've automatically created time. But in the spiritual world, there is no space. And since there is no space, you would think there should be no time. But he's just gone on to say the different levels within the spiritual world. You got the Atzilus, the Bria, you got the four worlds. So there has to be some form of hierarchy, some form of, this is bigger and better than the other ones. More revelation, less revelation. There's different rooms or different chambers or different channels or different places. What is it? So here we go. The realm of the spirit possesses space and time, as does the physical realm. They do have space, and they do have time. However, the definition of space and time differs between them, between the physical and the spiritual. There's a difference. The definition of spiritual time and space is not at all like that of physical time and space. There's no comparison. How is this? And here's the explanation. A physical place is defined by spatial definition, by having space. It is characterized as having 6 dimensions. 6 dimensions: up, down, right, left, northwest, east, south, and up and down. That's 6 dimensions. All philosophers agree that beyond the 9th sphere, which is, and we'll soon get to that, which is of this physical world, there is neither space nor emptiness, but only spiritual time and space. Let's go down to footnote number 49. Rambam, Hilchot Yesodei HaTorah, chapter 3, law 1. Rambam is Maimonides, and Maimonides has many books that he writes. He writes a book, for example, called The Guide to the Perplexed. In those days, the Muslims, the fanatical Muslims, what else is new? We're talking 800 and something years ago, were very, very heavy. He had to run away from Spain, which is where he was born, because of that. Because Spain was being taken over by Muslims. Eventually the Christians took over, and it didn't work out that much better, as we know from the Spanish Inquisition that came after that. But Spain was being run, so he had to run to Egypt, where there were Muslims, but it was a lot less problematic. Eventually he left Egypt to go to Morocco. Maybe I've got my facts backwards. Maybe he went to Morocco and then to Egypt. Either way, he was in that region, in the Middle East.
Sorry.
Yeah?
Is Rambam a term of endearment?
No, Rambam is an acronym of his name.
Oh.
Rambam, 4 letters in Hebrew. R is Reb,
Okay.
Mem is Moshe, the Beit is Ben, and Mem is Maimon. Reb Moshe the son of Maimon. That's where Maimonides comes from. That's a Greek term of saying the son of Maimon, Maimonides. And he had a contemporary who was Rabbi Nachman, but we don't know his father's name, so he's called Nachmanides. So we have Maimonides. That's where the Rambam comes from. The Rambam writes this guide to the perplexed because people were wondering if Islam is the new Judaism because it didn't believe in a figure and it only had a prophet and it had the words that were very similar. They stole, Muhammad, whoever wrote the Quran, stole from the Torah and just changed around some side facts. Like Isaac was not the real guy. Ishmael was the real one. And so on and so forth.
Change.
Yeah, just a minor change. He forgot to write Jerusalem in the Quran, by the way. It doesn't even appear in there. Even though it's the third holiest spot in Islam, yeah, obviously. Anyway, so he wrote the Guide to the Perplexed, which is a very deep philosophical explanation, logical explanation of Torah. He writes a commentary to the Mishnah, which is the beginning of the Talmud, in which he places many, many different facets of law and so on and so forth. And he is the composer of the 13 principles of faith. I believe. Ani ma'amin. I believe. The 12th one is I believe in the coming of the Mashiach. And the 13th one is I believe in the resurrection of the dead. The 13 principles of faith. First one is I believe that God is the God and I believe in Moses who wrote the Torah. These are the principles if you don't have those 13 principles, you're not really in the faith community. So that means there's a lot more to learn. I say that all the people who say they don't believe in God is only because they are ignorant of what it does say about God and all the different places where these things are discussed and learned and studied and taught.
So should I study him?
The Rambam? Well, everybody should study everything, of course.
Well, I know. Next in the queue.
But his magnum opus, which is Latin for his greatest achievement and his ultimate accomplishment, is the Mishnah Torah.
Uh-huh.
Mishnah Torah means the second Torah. What he did like no one else did, before or since. And you have to have a computer mind, literally, to do that. He took from the entire words of the sages, in the Talmud, in the Mishnah, in the Talmud, in the Midrash, and all the other sages that came before him. He lived in the 1100s, so we're talking about over 1,000 years from the Talmud and on. About 1,000 years, maybe 900 years. And he organized everything that they said in law. So he writes a 14-volume compilation of law, pure law, and this is the only book he writes in Hebrew. The other ones are all written in Arabic because he wrote them for the people of the day who were very fluent in Arabic. To people of Yemen, he writes a letter to the Yemenite people who had big trouble. There was a Jew who was an apostate and came to teach them that Judaism isn't right. Again, history repeats itself all the time. And so he sent an unbelievable letter. He sends a letter to converts. We talked about converts before. He sends a letter to converts. Somebody was rejecting a convert or being lightheaded with a convert. And he sends a scathing letter. He says, every convert is attributed to Abraham Avinu. They call him to the Torah, so-and-so, Ben Avraham. And you, I don't know where you come from. He's rooted in Abraham. This is a great leader and sage. He wipes him out. The letter of resurrection of the dead. An unbelievable letter that he writes about how resurrection of the dead is something that can happen and did happen and will happen. Remember, the Rambam was also a doctor. He wasn't just he was a medical doctor. He learned medicine. And for a time, he was the doctor of the king of Egypt in the king's court. He wasn't just a doctor. He was a great doctor. He writes at one point that I just don't have the time. He describes that it takes him 2 or 3 hours to go through the people that throng to his door every single day. So you're talking about a giant. That's why he's mentioned as one of the biggest, the best, the greatest. So but in this book, though, this book is, you can see, it's the love of his life. And it takes up 83 subjects.
The Mishnah Torah.
Yes, 83 subjects. The first subject is the foundations of the Torah. He goes according to the first and most important thing is to believe in God. So his first volume is Yesodei HaTorah, the foundations of the Torah. And in there, in the Yesodei HaTorah, he's got about 8-9 chapters. And each chapter has between 10 and 20 paragraphs. And he describes and discusses the foundations of the Torah. The next paragraph is the laws of knowing God. How do you know God? The Torah says you should know God. How do you know God? Get to know God. And he talks about, this is his famous, in one of those chapters, is his famous description of what a person should eat, what a person shouldn't eat, how much a person should sleep, how much a person shouldn't sleep. And at the end of the whole thing, he writes, if you follow these directions when you're younger, I guarantee you no harm will come to you. No diseases and anything, afflictions will come to you. So if you're ready to eat cabbage juice, and no, whatever. I remember all the things that he says, and some of those things may not be effective anymore for whatever reason. Maybe they grow in different places that are not as strong, whatever. But generally speaking, he maps out. He says, if you a healthy body is a healthy Jew. He goes that far.
Is 62 younger?
62. You're over the hill, Fred.
Yes. Yes,
It is. Okay.
Today's 60 is yesterday's 40, they say?
No, yesterday's 3.
3? Okay.
For guys only.
No, this is an inside joke.
You gotta be there yesterday.
You're right too, Susan.
I'm interested.
And then he has the law. So that's in the first section. The first section is called knowledge. The second volume of the 14 is called love, in which he details all of the laws that connect to loving God, like the recitation of the Shema, like prayer, all these laws. And all of them are in there. There are laws, 83 laws, and each law has chapters, and each chapter has verses, as sentences. Then the next one is called Zmanim, times, Shabbos and Pesach and Shavuos and Rosh Hashanah and Sukkot and Purim and Hanukkah. The next one is called women. All the laws that pertain pertain to the connection between man and woman. So you have the laws of marriage and the laws of ketubah and the laws of divorce and so on. And then you have the laws of Kedusha, holy things that we do because God says, I want you to be holy, keeping kosher, the purity and impurity of going to the mikveh, and so on and so forth. So the Maimonides covers the entire gamut and spectrum of Torah. You've got civil laws, and you've got purity and impurity laws, and you've got the final book is called the Book of Judges. And that is about the judges and about witnesses and about other things. And the final 83rd subject is the laws of kings. And in the laws of the king is a mitzvah of the Torah. And in the laws of kings, he discusses all the things that pertain to sovereignty of Israel and so on and so forth, the king. And the final 2 chapters are the chapters about Mashiach. So Maimonides goes through everything. The book of Code of Jewish Law, called the Shulchan Aruch, has 4 volumes. Those 4 volumes are the way of life, which continues through the day, through the year, Shabbos, Yom Tov, all of that. The next one is called Showing the Way. Those are the laws of kosher and the laws of mikveh and the laws of tzedakah and things that we do that don't depend on the day, not daytime things or time things. The third one is called the Stone of Help, in which there are the laws pertaining to marriage and divorce and all of that. And the final one is called the breastplate of judgment, justice. That's where the civil laws are held. But no laws that don't pertain to today are in those books. So you cannot learn about sacrifices, and you can't learn about purity and impurity and so on, because the leprosy and stuff that's in the Torah that's obscure. He throws every single thing, every single of the 613 commandments are in his book. And he writes in his introduction that I've written this book so you don't have to do anything other than we learn the written Torah, and then you can go straight to me if you want to know the law. The law is in here. Not everybody agreed to every single assertion that he made, but in the way he wrote, he was so brilliant. First of all, to gather from all of this information without having encyclopedias or without even having printing presses in his day is mind-boggling. I'll give you one just very quick example. He writes in the laws of Sefer Torah that you have to write it this way and that way. And he says, and other people have made a mistake. And what I did was I went to the synagogue in Cairo, or was it in Alexandria in Egypt, and there's a Sefer Torah there that was written by Ezra the scribe from the times of the Second Temple. And I checked there, and I know that this letter is this way and not that way. He went through everything to make sure I ascertain. And about 20 or 30 times in this entire volume, it's he says, and I believe, and my opinion is. He writes, in other words, it doesn't say it is, but this is what I suggest. But the rest of the time he's taken from what's we had previously. We have books that have all of the references, where he's getting this from. But the way he writes it can sometimes answer questions without him saying this is the answer to that question, that question. That's the brilliance. The way he writes it is unbelievable. And just incidentally, the Rebbe came out in 1984 and asked everybody to study the Rambam every day. And the most ambitious of the three cycles of how a person can study the Rambam is to study 3 chapters every day. And we are now, for the 34th time, we are now towards the end of the 13th book. And we're going to conclude this whole entire book of Rambam in exactly 1 month from yesterday.
Is it
So-
still in Hebrew only?
Oh no, it's available in English.
So
The entire set, each one of them is about $35.
Does it
And you
lose
got to buy
its-
about 80 of them or so.
Does it lose its meaning and translation from Hebrew to
Not quite. It's not the same like the Torah.
Not
It
quite.
everything does, but
Yeah.
it's not the same. No, this one
still
has.
pretty good?
This one is fantastic.
You have that. That's the colored thing, the Mishnah Torah that you have in the shul. You have it in the shul?
I don't have it in the shul. I have 2 sets over here.
Wow.
In my study,
80 volumes.
it's about 80 volumes in the English. Maybe it's about 60 or something. But each one of them, I went to buy one for one of my children who was doing their 1 chapter a day, which takes 3 years to conclude. This time we conclude the 3 and the 1. And the book of mitzvot, he also writes a book of all the commandments and explains them in just very brief 1-2 paragraphs. That book, that's easy to study. You take 5 minutes and you can do it the other day. And that follows the 3 chapters. That's also once a year it finishes. So, he is well versed. If you want to do anything in Jewish law, you've got to go to the Maimonides, because he just has everything. And when he doesn't have everything, everybody picks up this big screen, like, how come he missed this out? And
just in explanation in English, geared to children.
That's the one that lists the 600.
It just goes through the mitzvah. One is for negative, one is for positive.
the Rambam lives about 800, in 1985, we got to the 850th birthday. So it's now exactly 30 years since then. So we're talking 885 years ago he was born, and he lived for about 70, just before his 70th birthday. He was about 70. He was born on Erev Pesach. He writes the exact time, 11 something in the morning. And he passed away on the 20th day of Tevis, just before his 70th birthday. Okay. So this Rambam, Maimonides, in footnote number 49, I just give a background. I usually try to give a background of whoever we're talking about, but I wanted to spend more time on the Rambam because he's so important to us now that the Rebbe asked that we should study every day 3 chapters of his. And so every day, I don't miss a day. I don't go to sleep before I'm done with this. That's very, very, very important to me. And so we're just learning the laws of inheritance right now. It's like laws that you never think of. You never get into. But once a year, you come across, and you basically you united the whole entire Torah in
It
front of you.
takes 3 years to do the whole thing?
It takes 1 year if you do 3 chapters every day, and it takes
Okay.
quite a significant amount of time to do 3 chapters.
Yeah.
1 chapter would take maybe a few minutes. If you want to do it in depth, it could take you a half hour.
Okay.
3 chapters takes you 3 times as long. All right. So in footnote 49, Rambam Hilchot Yesodei HaTorah. These are the opening words, the opening subject of the Rambam's 83 subjects, the laws of the foundation of the Torah. Foundation of the Torah means faith in God. Who is God? That's how he starts off. He said the first words are, the foundation of all foundations and the pillar of all wisdoms is to know that there is a being there, he uses the term there, who is the first being, and nothing depends, he doesn't depend on anything else. That means he's there, and everything comes from him, and nothing gives to him. In other words, he's independent of whatever comes out of him. He is there. And then he goes on to describe, not as detailed as Kabbalah, and he's not a Kabbalistic book, he's a law book. But he describes the different elements. He talks about angels, he talks about souls, he talks also about the celestial beings. And then he talks about also the space. And he writes, Rambam Hilchot Yesodei HaTorah, chapter 3, and the first paragraph there. So the 9th sphere, he says, refers to Shamayim, the heavens. And when the Torah talks about the heavens, it's talking about that which is way beyond our sky. It's talking about the heavens that are above everything. And he describes everything, which you might find this in Aristotle, by the way, but he describes everything as different spheres that are round. And for the definition of the 9th sphere, Rambam laws 6 and 7 over there. And above that is spirituality.
Yeah.
He goes through the 8 spheres, and one of them is in the planets, and the other one is this, and the other one is that, and the other one is this and that, and the other, until you get to the 9th sphere. That's the heavens, and beyond that is spirituality. And he's going to say it right here. Let's do the second chapter, this paragraph again. A physical place is defined by spatial definition. That means it's defined by space. It is characterized as having 6 dimensions, as we said before. North, east, west, south, and the up and down. All philosophers agree that beyond the 9th sphere, that place that no one's gone, which is of this physical world, there is neither space nor emptiness. There's not a space or not a place where there is no space, but only spiritual time and space. And so, what if you got there, what do you see? And it says, this is a question when I was 17, I kept on asking my Hasidic teacher, a Hasidus teacher. And it took me a while for him, if I got a spaceship that went up however many billions of light years away and it got there, what would you see? And he says, you would see nothing. And nothing is not defined. We don't know what nothing is. Because everything we have is something. Space or place or emptiness, it's something. So that's where you would go. And past the 9th sphere, it's spiritual. No more space. No more dimensions of north, east, west, south, up, and down. Okay? Our minds, human intellect, which resides in a physical brain, page 46, albeit the most refined of physical substances, which is our brain, cannot grasp the meaning of beyond time and space, as I just said before. You can't grasp that. What does it mean beyond time and space? Everything has space. In our minds, there is always a beginning and always an end. Our perception operates within time and space. What is beyond time and space, we cannot grasp. So when the famous question comes to how did God get there? Everybody asks that question, and kids especially. So who put Hashem there? And the answer to that question is, What do you mean? How does he have to? Why does somebody have to put him there? Well, wait a minute. Everything that we have over here came from something. Where did he come from? But he doesn't follow those rules. We can't understand how he works. His whole working is beyond our comprehension. That's where faith comes in, because we can't understand that. We have to do as much as we can to understand God, because God says in the Torah, "Know God, know that today, get to know me." But there are parts of him, and in fact, most of him, where there's no way we're going to get to know him. It doesn't operate on our terms and our levels. We don't even know about souls. We don't even know about. All right, Elliot, that's for you. All right, so
I got it.
so the perception that we have only lasts until the physical time and space. After that, we can't really comprehend how it works. To us, everything, and I mentioned this last week, that before people pass away, they're seeing gardens and they're seeing water and they're seeing people and they're seeing, like, it's a scene from this world, but it's heavenly. Then they know it's heavenly. They sort of perceive that it's heavenly. But that's not what heaven is. There's no grass, there's no trees, and there's no fields, and there's no water, and there's no mountains, and there's no nature, and there's no dogs or golf courses. I'm sorry. It doesn't work that way. That's all here in this world to enjoy physical matter. In the other world, there is no enjoyment that makes any place over there. It's nothing. It's beyond our perception. And we can't really comprehend it. And remember, there's no physical bodies there, it's only spiritual, and therefore the only thing that is there is perception, is understanding. And the understanding of the upper world is much greater than it is in this world. And when they study the Torah, they're not studying the Torah the way we understand it over here, that if a bull gores the donkey, or if so-and-so steals from this one, or to put on tefillin on your arm. They don't have arms, they don't have this stuff. So they learn Torah in a whole different dimension, a whole different way. And they learn. The perception, comprehension, that is there. And there's tremendous pleasure from those who have prepared themselves in this world to go to the other world so they can become spiritual in all the matters of spirituality that they bring with them. When one goes to the other world, one takes with him or her all the things that they did, the action, and all the things they understood and learned and studied, and that gives them an opportunity to study those matters in a whole different way. And that's very pleasurable. That's the great pleasure in the other world.
Is it instantaneous? Like,
I don't
go there
know.
and it's like,
I don't know. But there's studying going on over there. The Talmud relates several stories of Talmudic sages who went up there, who made it up there, and entered into the chamber of Moses, and entered into the thing. You saw him teaching Torah, Rabbi Akiva, and so on. I don't know. Who knows? The way it works, it's not something that we could really. And even if we think about it, we say, "What do you mean? You study all day and night? Like how does that work? And what do you mean you get pleasure? And is there anything else? Is there any recreation up there? Is there any breaks? Is there any rest? Do you get time to the downtime over there? You get to play golf?
That's it.
Yeah.
It's definitely house. I know it.
It's what you create in your mind.
It's spiritual kind of golf.
What's that?
It's a spiritual golf.
Yeah, but
No
It's
ball
golf.
range.
You win all the time.
but the problem is that there is no need to rest or recreation. It's only physical. We need to sleep here. We need to eat. We need to have downtime. That's not necessary for an entity without a body. There's no body to drag one down. Did the Rebbe ever take time off to go and ski and the recreation, to rest? No. Because he was living in heaven. Although his feet were very firmly planted down on the earth, and he was a most earthly man, the most practical person you've ever seen. But for himself, he picked at his plate, and he hardly ate and he hardly slept. He studied all day. It was his greatest pleasure. He didn't need any rest. Didn't want any rest. Didn't care for that. That was not his goal.
Some Tuesday night, can we go further into reincarnation? I know we discussed it once, but I'm wondering now, for example, does the soul decide to go for another lifetime? Is it God's decision to do that? Is there some kind of guideline?
Yeah, we went through this. We'll have to go through it again, I guess. Okay.
I'd like to opt out on that one because I don't want to take Algebra 1 again.
Had nothing to do with algebra. There's no
I learned algebra 1 very well, so I agree.
no time or space, and you're not going to see any angels whether you
I'm saying
study
if
it.
we reincarnate-
I know.
Yeah, but are there X, Y, and Z's?
X, Y, and Z's, please. We watch our children doing that. All right. Anyway, back to the point. So, we don't have a perception. We don't have to ask where did God come from, and we don't really know and understand and appreciate on our terms, in our minds, how these things work, because doesn't work in our spheres. It doesn't work that way. Okay. Indirect perception. Now, even though spiritual time and space are beyond our ken, that's a good word, beyond our ability to grasp, that means, nevertheless, we know perceptibly that the definition of a place, in other words, in the spiritual world, is not limited to that which is defined by a six-dimensional space. We can only understand, we only have the ken to be able to look at a six-dimensional place. If it's not six-dimensional, you can't move in there. It's closed. If there's no up and there's no down, then it doesn't exist. Every single thing, the smallest of things, has 6 dimensions, or else it's not here. It's not physical. But in the spiritual world, that stuff doesn't happen. It's not necessary. That's not that kind of space that we are talking about. There can be a space that is not defined by the description of space that we perceive. The same is true of time. Its definition is not limited to what we perceive it to be. Time means a second, then a minute, then an hour, then a day, then a month, then a year, and then 10 years, and 20 years, and 50 years. That's not how time works necessarily in a place where there is no space. Time means how long does it take to get from here to New York, to where I will be heading on Wednesday with God's help. That's time. Or what time the flight is leaving, what time you have to leave your house to get to the airport. We all, as one, know that we possess a soul and that its faculties are active through the parts of the body in various functions. So the soul is able to be active within the physical body in different functions. For example, delight. Delight and pleasure is something that if the soul wasn't affected by it, then you wouldn't feel the delight. You would feel disturbed and you would feel unsettled and whatever. Delight, pleasure, true pleasure is where everything is just beautiful. It's just perfect. Where every part of you is in sync. Nothing hurts. Nothing bothers you. It's pleasure, pure pleasure. I don't know what floats your boat, but it could be a meal. It could be a trip to a favorite spot. It could be a favorite team winning something. It could be you on a team winning something. There's a lot of ways where pleasure can be expressed. But pleasure, it's not really expressed, it's enjoyed. It's an internal thing. Now, wherever you are, you can have pleasure. But if you're something bothering, if your leg is hurting you while you're trying to walk on the pier, in the ocean, or on your cruise, or wherever you are, you're not going to enjoy it. And when somebody asks you, how was it? You say, it was great, but I had the problem. As soon as that but comes in, that's not true pleasure. Pleasure means that at that moment, everything is just beautiful and perfect and just right and delightful. That's delight. That is a soul as well. Will is a will power. They say where there is a will, there is a way. If you have a will, you can move mountains with willpower. And sometimes people don't even realize that they have it. But they are confronted, they now have to get something done, and everything looks around that it's not possible. And somehow with willpower, with sheer power, which is the opposite of delight, by the way. Delight is no strength and power. It's just sit back, relax. Willpower means I have a will and I'm going to get it done no matter what. That's will. Wisdom. And it's also, it's just so, you have to have your soul harnessed in order to get down to the deepest dimensions. The soul provides you with that focus and that fortitude and that tenacity. Okay, wisdom. Wisdom is being able to perceive something, to think, and to be able to understand something. That's a very strong spiritual thing as well, and provided by the soul. And understanding something, and comprehension, and love, and fear, and pride, thought, meditation, speech, and deed. All of those things are somehow related to the force of life which is within us. The force of life is provided by the soul, and therefore the soul is able to express itself through the physical faculties that we have. So delight means that now all of our physical faculties are as one. And will means that all of our physical faculties are focused in one direction, one dimension, stubbornly getting it done. And thought and understanding and comprehension and love and fear, all of that are expressions of the soul in different ways, because the body brings the soul to the different expressions that it has. So in the heart to love, and in the heart to fear, and in the mind to think, and in the mind to understand and to comprehend, and so on. So although they are spiritual entities, divorced from physicality, what is pleasure? Pleasure is what? How do you define pleasure? That what happens in pleasure? You can't. It's like it's an intangible. It's a feeling. And again, what is will? Will is what? That all of me wants something. You can't say, I want to move that mountain, I want to move this table, but my toe doesn't really, it's not on board. It's encompassing the entire body. And so what is it? So is it who wants to do it? All of me, but who is all of me? It's like, it's everything. So it's the soul coming out in different ways. And again, with love. When you love someone, then everything is great. There is no problems anymore. Everything is beautiful. So although they are spiritual entities, all of these things, they are intangibles. Thought, understanding. There's not a tangible place and expression here. They are divorced from physicality. Nevertheless, the faculties of the soul are nevertheless perceptible. You can see that your life is in this. When you have pleasure, your whole life is having pleasure. When you have will, your whole person is having pleasure. So it's got to come from your deeper dimensions, your spiritual dimensions. Because the body is a physical body. So is your heart loving at that time? It's not just your heart, it's all of you. That's like beyond the body. Their expression through delight, will, intellect, emotions, thought, speech, and deed not only attest to their existence of the spiritual forces, but also gives us an idea of what they are and how they differ from one another. Because if you can think, and then if you have the emotions of a feeling of love, and you have this power of will, and you have this delight, they're very different from one another. When you love someone, then you can be enticed, or you can be encouraged to will something. And then you get to your pleasure. But there are different levels and different dimensions within the person. And at the same time, you may not be thinking. Your thought may get in the way of your will or of your pleasure. So your boss will tell you, I'm only giving you 7 days. And in your mind, you're thinking, who do you think you are? I'm taking 10 days. And when the 9th day arrives, or the 8th day arrives, and you're 3 days late, and you know your boss is not going to pay you, and you're in your most pleasurable place, you're with your grandchildren on a cruise, or on your favorite, whatever it might be. I've never been on a cruise, so that's why I say that. I have no idea what a cruise is. But I can imagine it. So when you're in this level of pleasure, and your thoughts keep on creeping in, what's your boss going to say when you get back? Now, are you going to be prepared for this? And you say, get out of my head. I don't want to hear you now. I'm enjoying myself. I'm having pleasure. So things get in the way. Hey, sir, I'm getting married next week. and I need 7 days off. 7 days off to get married? What are you, crazy? We need you in the store, in the office. I know, but I'm getting married and I need 7 days. That's the tradition. Hey, sir, it's Passover next week. So I need to take off 2 days. 2 days for a holiday? Why? Since when is 2 days? Thanksgiving is only 1 day. December 25th is only 1 day. New Year's Day is only 1 day. All of a sudden, you guys have 2 days. Yeah, but that's the religion. I can show it to you. I can prove it to you. I don't care what it says in your religion. I need you in the office. But you're taking off the second day anyway because it's a Yom Tov and you've got to go and do what God wants you to do. It doesn't matter. Your boss doesn't run your life. He just runs your business life. And so you're sitting at the second Seder night, you're worrying, tomorrow I'm not going to go to work, what am I going to do? Get the heck with this. I'm sitting with my grandchildren. I'm sitting with my family. I'm sitting with my friends. I'm enjoying myself. Enjoy it. Forget about what's going to happen. What's going to happen is going to happen down the road. Your thoughts get in the way. But your will says, I don't care what you say. I'm going and doing it anyway. You can suffer the consequences in 2 days from now. And that you'll have to confront them then. And then you may have other emotions that will get, and their mind will not function properly. You want to kill the guy. That's how it is. That's how life is. So there's different feelings. None of these are tangibles. Like, you can't say, oh, now my hand will be, it's not, it's a deeper part of a person. It's not the body. It's further than the body. It's the feelings. What are feelings? Are they physical? Is that the blood within us? Is that the nerves? What are feelings? When you have those feelings, yeah, your blood boils and your nerves begin to go all over the place. It could be in a good way or in an angry way, a sad way, a happy way. The feelings that we have. But what are feelings? They're intangible. They're spiritual. They come from the soul. That's what he's saying here. Intellect, in all of its elements, which are creativity, understanding, probing, gives us a conception of its nature and its distinction from will and delight, as well as its distinction from emotions and deed. Intellect is different than emotions, very different, the opposite of emotions. Emotions are feelings that may not have intellectual abilities. In other words, you can feel that this woman or man is good for you. A good feeling, strong feeling. Strong feelings for her, for him. But intellectually, you'll know that this person is not good for you. Because this person is whatever, is too holy, not holy enough, not spiritual enough, too stupid, too far. But I have feelings. They're completely opposite from one another. There's a confrontation. So what are feelings? I have spiritual feelings. What are they? Feelings. So when you have intellect, he says, it gives us a conception of what it is and also what it isn't. And the other things are not intellect. And they don't follow necessarily intellectual guidelines. If you'd ask anybody about talking to your boss, you would say, hey, hold on over there. You can't be defiant like that because you might not get a job. That's intellect. And then comes emotions and feelings or will or whatever. And I say, the heck with you. So they confront one another in their different dimensions. They're different. That's what space means. Not that space takes up 6 dimensions. It's all within us. And it's all spiritual. It's not in your hands and your feet and your heart and your brain. It's in your entire essence. It's in who you are. Just as it is with intellect, that its function verifies its nature and existence and portrays the image of its design, that intellect gives us an understanding of what intellect is, so you can know how to be creative and how to think and how to have ideas and whatnot. So it is with all of the soul's faculties. These, however, are divided into 3 general categories: transcendent faculties, internal faculties, some of which are composed, like the intellect, others animated, like the emotions. So they're internal faculties, and facilitative faculties, which means, which, as he says in the bottom, faculties that serve. that are for other reasons.
So this is an explanation of what it's like to be at that highest level?
No, not yet.
Oh,
What he's saying is that we consider space. His first, there was two questions over here, and the first question was, does space exist in the other worlds?
we know it doesn't.
And he says it's not possible, so how is it possible to have different worlds? So then he went on to explain what the worlds are, and went into a long explanation of that. Now that we understand that there are different worlds, and each one of them has a different function, the question is then, so how do you regard that space? If there are spaces, what is this space? He's trying to explain to us what this space is. So in our minds, space is 6 dimensions. It's got an up and a down, a right, left, and north and south, and we're in. But in spiritual worlds, the space that is there can be all within you. We occupy only a certain amount of space, but within us there's so many different ways to go, and each one of them may be not just different from one another, but opposed to one another. That's when we have conflicts within ourselves. What should we do? How should we go about doing it? And how, because we think one way and we feel a different way and we have a perception in a different way, and other people tell us this and other people tell us that, and we have a tough time making decisions because we are stuck within the spaces that are within us. But there's no spaces. Yet it's space. It's different. So different from one another. I think this is very brilliant here.
So when we get to this, this is a different level trying to define what remains other than space and time. This is what you have.
Outside of the physical space
Yes.
and time, there is the spiritual space and time, which we can understand
That's what
even
this is.
from looking at ourselves. Yeah. Although we don't have any perception of the time and space up in heaven, but we look at yourselves and you see the time and space. Okay, the next part of this, he'll explain what the three that he just said now, and that this will bring everything to a close. So we will need the full hour next time we get together in order for us to dig into this. And this will be just absolutely brilliant and give us a very good explanation of the spiritual time and space.
Right on.
Now, I will not be in town. Let's just say goodbye to our electronic friends.